Hello and welcome to a new video on lung volumes and capacities. And so in this video what we're going to do is we're going to look at first the volumes of the lungs, which are measured by spirometry, and then we're going to look at the capacities of the lungs, which are found by adding up the different various volumes of the lungs. So remember that these two words do mean something different. So with volumes, what you guys want to be thinking of is this means that they are measured, right? I have measured them with spirometry, which is a test where you breathe with the patient breathes onto a mouthpiece, and this measures the volumes of airs moved, and this is graphed and displayed for the medical professional to be able to look at that and ascertain what's going on with the patient. So the other thing is capacities. And with capacities, just remember that these are calculated, right? What this means is I'm going to take one volume and add it to some other volume or volumes, right? So we're going to add volumes together to make the capacities. So the first ones we're going to talk about, now I borrowed these from my PowerPoint slides as this makes it a little bit easier to be able to look at and try to understand. So let's make them a little bit more easy to grasp and understand what's going on. So the first off with the volumes, remember these are measured through spirometry. So what we're going to look at with the spirometric data is to understand first off we have what's called a resting tidal volume, or simply tidal volume. We abbreviate this V sub T. And the tidal volume is a particular volume that we are measuring. This is when I'm normal breathing, doing some normal breathing, breathing quietly. I'm moving some air in and some air out. So we refer to this volume as the tidal volume. Then the next one, guys, will be the expiratory reserve volume, and we're going to see after I breathe in, after a normal exhalation, after I breathe out, there is still some air that I can still breathe out, and we're going to see that. Residual volume we're going to see is after I breathe out everything I can, this is the air that's still there. No matter what I do, I cannot move this air. And a sub-volume of that would be called the minimal volume, and this is if I had a collapsed lung, it would still be there as well. This is how much it would be even after the lung collapses. But remember, the residual volume is the amount of air. You will never move it. It is always going to be there. And then there's also an inspiratory reserve volume, abbreviated IRV. This inspiratory reserve volume, after a normal resting tidal volume, after I have a normal inhalation from a tidal volume, there's still more air I can breathe in. Now, to make this understandable, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to come in and draw out a graph of this. And we'll use these things here, and we'll come back to that. So what I'm going to do, let's start off, guys, by taking a graph and drawing this graph out. And if you're doing this at home, I would definitely urge you to draw this with me. On this graph, we're going to put a bar at the bottom, and we're going to put two bars here kind of in the middle. And so what we're going to look at, let's imagine we have the patient that we have hooked up to a spirometer, and we are commanding them to breathe. We're ordering them to breathe as part of a test. And we start measuring, and the first thing is you tell the patient, take one normal breath. Right? One normal breath in, one normal breath out. All right? And then let's say we had them do another normal breath. And at the very bottom of that, we say, now, as you take a normal breath, hold it, and let's take a deep breath in. And now hold it and breathe out all the air you can breathe. This would be what this graph would look like. Now remember that this volume that I've moved here, I have my tidal volume is in this bar, the air that I breathe during a normal, quiet respiratory cycle. Now, the other one that we want to be able to see is we have our inspiratory reserve volume. When I tell my patient to take a normal breath in and then have them breathe more on top of that, that's an inspiratory reserve volume. Then once I have them take a normal exhale and then have them exhale some more, that's an expiratory reserve volume. That is the amount of air that I can breathe out that stands in reserve. Inspiratory reserve volume is the amount of air that I can breathe in past my normal, it stands as a reserve as well. So tidal volume is normally what I move, and then if I take a deep breath in, inspiratory reserve volume. If I take a deep breath out, expiratory reserve volume. And remember, we're always going to have this amount of air that I am not moving. And that amount of air I am not moving is our residual volume, which does include our minimal volume. So with that graph, let's now go back one slide. And let me show you guys the capacities. Now, the capacities are tricky to understand. And with the capacities, what you'd see is inspiratory capacity, or IC. Think about this. I've breathed in my tidal volume, but I can also breathe in the inspiratory reserve volume. And these two make up the inspiratory capacity. I've completed a quiet respiratory cycle. I've moved all the air out. I can breathe it in, and then I can breathe that. I can also breathe in the inspiratory capacity. So it's the the inspiratory reserve volume plus the tidal volume. Functional residual capacity is I've got my expiratory reserve volume, and then there is air in the residual volume. Now, residual volume, it's important that we know that we normally never move that. So any capacity that includes this residual volume here is not a reliable volume because we are usually estimating that. Now, if you're using nitrogen wash or the helium method by having the patient breathe in the helium gas and then having take a blood draw with the helium, then you can see what's going on there. Now, a vital capacity, very important that we are taking the amount of air that I normally move, the tidal volume, the amount of air I can breathe in on top of that, inspiratory reserve volume, and the amount of air that I can breathe out on top of a normal exhalation, the expiratory reserve volume. So this is all the air I can move. This is all the air, the maximum amount of air I move in or out, right? Now, if I take every single volume of my lungs, right, my tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume, that's my total lung capacity, or TLC. Now, also, remember, since it's got residual volume in it, this is also not a completely reliable one, as usually this is an estimation, but we can directly try to measure that with some methods, nitrogen wash, for example, the helium method that we talked about. So let's take a look at this and see what we can see about this, guys, and help it make a little bit more sense. So first off, as we said, we saw some different volumes. And these volumes that we saw, let's look at the volumes in green here. Let's use blue, and let's now get our capacities. Now, the inspiratory capacity, it's very important that we see that I can breathe in the tidal volume plus my inspiratory reserve volume. Now, functionally, in my lungs, I have a residual that's left after a normal complete respiratory cycle. There's still some air. Normal tidal volume. After that, I still got room in the expiratory reserve volume, but I've also got some room in the residual volume. Now, residual volume is there. It generally never gets moved unless something like a collapsed lung, and then I will lose some of that. So what we'd see is this is our functional residual capacity, FRC, functional residual capacity. Now, the next one, vital capacity. Remember what we're doing with vital capacity is you are taking all the air you're moving, your vital capacity, and I'm only moving the green line. So that means anything below the bottom line where residual volume resides is not getting moved. So then the very last one is the total lung capacity, and this is the sum of all four volumes, what we call the total lung capacity. Now, I always tell my students, I said, when TLC comes on the radio and Waterfalls comes on, you're gonna sing your lungs out like you're the fourth member of TLC. So this is the adding of all four volumes to make total lung capacity. So that makes that very easy to understand. So hopefully, graphically taking these bars of the capacities and boxing them around the volumes will make it very helpful for you guys to understand it. So I really hope this video made this helpful. It can be a tricky concept at first, but guys, if you take time to understand this, it can definitely be grasped, and something for people at all levels of healthcare to definitely understand. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Please take time to comment, like, and subscribe. Give me some feedback. I would love to hear in the comments what you would like to see in future videos, and I hope you found this helpful. Thank you and have a great day.